Hi everyone, I'm Noe and this is Afrific Rev Space. Today we'll be reviewing Taib Salih's Season of Migration to the North. Taib was a great Sudanese writer, and this novel put his name on the literary landscape of Africa and the world. It was first published in Arabic in 1966 and then in English in 1969. Plot summary of the novel. The novel, set in the Sudanese of the 1960s, revolves around the protagonist, Mustafa Said, who travels to Europe to further his education. He succeeds in his academic pursuit and professional engagements, but while in Europe, he's obsessed with denigrating European women. He would chase a woman, win her over, be with her for some time, and then abandon her and begin a new chase. And this new chase is not just the casual chase where a man sees a woman and says hi and then they begin to talk. No, it's where he sees a woman and then he thinks, I want this woman, and he begins to strategize, plan on how to woo her and win her over. And he does this like he's preparing for an exam or a difficult interview. He sees himself as a predator and the women he chases as his prey. So when he eventually abandons the women, they become suicidal. So 3 men actually commit suicide because of him. And then his third prey, Jane Morris, he actually chases her for 3 years and eventually is able to convince her to marry him. And then she marries him. After a moment of sexual intimacy, he murders her in cold blood. And so he goes to jail, completes his term, and then he returns to Sudan. But nobody knows about his ugly past. But there's this aura around him that is haunting. It haunts the narrator, and he becomes curious. He wants to know about his life. So Said tells him about his ugly past in Europe. And then after telling him that, he sends him a suicidal letter where he tells him to take care of his 2 sons and his wife in the event of his death. And then after that, the man disappears. And then another request he makes is that he should make sure that his 2 sons actually get a normal life, So that's the plot summary of the novel. So the themes revolve around betrayed love, friendship, the effect of the absence of parental love in early childhood, and the devaluation of women. The popular reading or interpretation of this text is that Mustafa Said's destruction of European women is actually his way of trying to get even with the European world for the denigration and exploitation of Africa during the colonial times. In post-colonial discourse, the colonial experience is seen as rape. So the colonial masters actually raped their colonial subjects. And Mustafa Said is trying to use his sexual organs to get even. But if you look at that, it sounds crazy, but that's not, unless you're doing a literal interpretation, but it's a metaphorical interpretation actually. So, but the loophole in this interpretation is that it's not only European women that he destroys. Anybody who gets close to him becomes suicidal after the interaction. So his Sudanese wife, when he dies, also becomes suicidal. So on these notes, there must be something that is wrong with Mustafa that Mustafa transfers to people who are intimate with him or interact very closely with him. So I want to now look at what that could be. So I'm connecting it to lack of parental love during his formative years. So we find this when he tells the story of his childhood to the narrator. He tells the narrator that he didn't have a loving childhood, and I quote, "I was born in Khartoum and grew up without a father. I had no brothers and sisters, so life was not difficult for me and my mother. When I think back, I see her clearly with her thin lips resolutely closed with something on her face like a mask. I don't know, a thick mask, as though her face were the surface of the sea. Do you understand? It possessed not a single color, but a multitude, appearing and disappearing and intermingling. We had no relatives. She and I acted as relatives to each other. It was as if she were some stranger on the road, with whom circumstances had chanced to bring me." So if you look at the last 2 sentences, that they acted as relatives to each other, and then she's like some stranger that chance had, brought in contact with him. So, and then there are other things in the excerpt to, like thin lips resolutely closed, which means they were not communicating. If he his mother's lips were always closed. It means that the mother did not talk to her son. And if she didn't talk to the son, there's no how she's going to know the son, and there's no how the son is going to know her. And then her face was a mask, again not welcoming, which means when the child looks at the face of his mother, he would see that the mother doesn't want to communicate with him, and then he's going to be on his own. So we can begin to imagine the kind of lonely childhood that this child experienced. And then there's another excerpt also that shows or illuminates this first one to show the kind of relationship he had with his mother. And this one is at the age of 12, when he is about to go to Cairo to further his education. So he comes and he tells his mother about it, and this is his mother's response. She says, "Had your father lived," she said to me, "he would not have chosen for you differently from what you've chosen for yourself. Do as you wish, depart or stay, it's up to you, it's your life and you're free to do with it as you will. In this purse is some money which will come in useful." That was our farewell. No tears, no kisses, no fuss. Two human beings had walked along a part of the road together. Then each had gone his way. After long years and numerous experiences, I remember that moment and I wept. So if we look at this one too, it's a terrible experience for a child of 12. A crucial decision in his life that his mother should make for him, like he's leaving Sudan, he's going to Cairo, and the woman is saying it is your life. You can either go to Cairo or you stay. Whatever you want to do. It's none of my business. She's very nonchalant about it. And then she doesn't even go to the school authorities to say, "Do you have any family in Cairo where my son is going to stay? People who will take care of him," because he's still a baby. A boy of 12 is a child. And then she does not think of, okay, give me a contact in Cairo so that when I want to see my son, I'll be able to do that. So their pattern is just like death, dying. Like he goes and he's dead to his mother, and the mother is also dead to him. And then when he talks about no tears, no kisses, no fuss, these are expressions that we show when we are like trying to show affection. You're parting with somebody you love, so you kiss the person or you cry, to show that you're going to miss the person. And then we expect this from this woman because this child is the only person she has in the world. And so as an only child, we expect a mother to be clingy, to cry, to not want to release her son, But we don't see this. Of course, we don't see it because there was never any relationship. So, but this is going to show us the kind of lonely childhood that this child had. So he must have felt very bad. That must have left a void, deep in his heart, wondering why his mother would be so cold and detached, in her relationship with him. So this detachment and cold behavior actually makes the child to feel insecure, because his mother is supposed to inject into him in his formative years love and the sense of security that would help him to now thrive in the world. So, but because of that detachment, his emotional development becomes abnormal. Like it tells us that he gets to a point where he's like rubber, elastic rubber, So when you throw it into the water does not touch it. When you throw it on the ground, it does not interact with the ground. So what that is telling us is that this child has gotten to a stage in his life where he's numb. Nothing touches him, nothing moves him. He says the things that will make the children of his age to cry doesn't affect him. When his teachers praise him for being brilliant and outstanding, he doesn't feel excited about it. Nothing moves him. So according to the psychologist Alice Miller, in her book Banished Knowledge, Facing Childhood Injury, she says that children who grow up in toxic and dysfunctional families, that they repress their emotions. So like this boy now, you're not going to express anything because nobody's even looking at your face. So he will keep on repressing it, shrinking it. And then at some point, it becomes the emotional development of becoming authentic will now be abnormal. So that is why he's so insecure and he doesn't know how to treat the love that people give to him. So each time he's interacting with these women, he's just giving out something toxic, And then a critic who read the text actually said that the way he relates with the European women is because he's looking for his lost mother in these women. So he sees the women as mother figures. He's looking for validation in those women. But then when they show him love, he only gives them the infection that makes them suicidal. So eventually, when he completes his term and returns to Sudan, he marries a Sudanese woman, thinking that having a Sudanese woman will maybe make a difference in his life, but it does not make any difference in his life. And eventually he commits suicide and he dies. So if you look at it, we see that it's the lack of parental care, the lack of love that is shown to him as a child that affects him all through his life. Even though he succeeds academically and professionally, he is an insecure man, and that insecurity pushes him to eventually take his own life. And then the next theme is the devaluation of women. So in this text, women are treated as sexual objects for men. They are there for the gratification of men's sexual urges. And then the men see the world as their world. So if a woman is going to be in that world, she's going to live on the terms given to her by her father, her brothers, or her husbands. And so when her husband dies, she says she doesn't want to remarry. And there's a very important thing that they note about her. They said that as a child and as a teenager before her marriage, that she was full of life, very animated and very extroverted. But 2-3 years into her marriage, she becomes this different person who is expressionless, does not talk, nobody understands her anymore. So it is something in her marriage that is responsible for the change in her behavior. But then they don't go in to begin to try to find out what that is. So when she says she's not going to remarry, her father and her brothers force her into a second marriage. And because of her reluctance to go into that second marriage, people actually want her husband to be very patient and careful with her. So the man, after staying for some time, he's frustrated and he's like, how can I be a husband? I have done my rights as a husband and I'm not able to touch my wife. And so he tries to force himself on her. And in trying to do that, the woman stabs him to death. And then the stabbing is like in different places, you know. You look at his body, you see different mouths where blood bleeds out from. And then after murdering her husband, she also kills herself. So by killing her husband, her second husband, she mirrors the actions of her first husband. Mustafa actually kills his first wife, Jean Morris. So this is like mirroring that. And so she actually doubles whatever Mustafa does in his lifetime, because she kills her second husband and she also kills herself. And that is her way of drawing attention to her community, to the plight of women. You know, the women there, they are treated anyhow. Like this, her second husband that she murders tells a story of when he was younger, how he raped a slave girl. And then he tells this story and his friends, they listen to him, elderly men, and they're all laughing and, you must have been a very strong youth, that kind of thing. And nobody bothers about the abused woman. Whether she gets pregnant, whether she gets infected, the stigma, whatever she feels, nobody's bothered about that. So that's the plight of women in this world. So by killing herself and killing her second husband, she draws attention to that situation of women that the society has refused to look at. So even though it's a violent thing, but then it's a sacrifice. So in the future, fathers are going to be careful when their daughters say, I'm not interested, you know. And then prospective husbands are also not going to want to marry women who are unwilling to, you know, marry them. So that way, it's something transformative. And then the narrative point of view, this story is, you know, you have a lot of frames. So Mustafa's story is framed inside the story of the narrator, and then you have other stories. So you see that these stories are like 2-3 times removed from the first one. And in this way, it helps us to see the difference between appearance and reality. So when Mustafa tells his story, and then when another person tells the story, you will see that there's a difference. Like, people see him, oh, he's a very brilliant man. He's the first man to marry a European woman. He must be a minister now or a commissioner, wherever he is, without knowing that the man committed suicide. So they see his calm demeanor, and then they see that, oh, he's successful. But then within him, he doesn't see himself as a successful man. He kills himself. It's just like Edwin Arlington's Richard Cory. You know, Richard Cory, people see him, they admire him, they want to be like him, and then they are working hard to be like him, be like copies of Richard Curry. Eventually, Richard Curry goes home and he kills himself. So we see that split personality with this kind of narrative point of view. And then another good thing about this novel is that it has a lot of layers. You know, you have different interpretations. You can actually pick up this text and get different interpretations from the text. So that is what makes it great literature, where you're able to have different interpretations from this story. So it's a great post-colonial text. If you have not read it, pick it up and read it. Then let me know what you think about the review. Is it helpful? Does it make sense? Leave your questions too. So that's it for now. Have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy your Christmas. Until next time, take care.